To talk us through his presentation titled A Practical Guide to Getting Started in ESG, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Mr. Edey Suresh, Board Director, UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei. A round of applause.
Morning again. Thank you, everyone. Glad that we already had coffee, so I don't put anyone to sleep while I'm at it. So this next 45 minutes, I don't want it to be a lecture of sorts. Let's keep it a bit of. Let's use the opportunity to think together, and I believe there is also opportunity for some Q&A. Are there Q&A? No.
No.
I'm sure we can make some time for Q&A as well.
Okay,
if there are any questions as well. And yeah, let's just use this opportunity to think together and understand how do we navigate sustainability and ESG together as an organization, as a business, and also as individuals, right? Thanks again for the invitation, Prof and team. I saw the lineup of speakers. I was like, wow, quite an impressive lineup. I think I barely made the cut, so thank you. And I also had a couple of discussions while we were all having coffee, and I noticed that not everyone is familiar with the UN Global Compact. So some of them came up to me and asked me, oh, are you with the university? I said, oh, no, I'm not. So perhaps to do some justice to my organization, and also to be fair, we are not as famous as our sisters, WHO or UNICEF and so on. WHO, I think thanks to COVID, everyone knows who is WHO. And UNICEF are the guys who work with children and so on. So the UN Global Compact was started by Kofi Annan with a mandate to work with companies on sustainability and ESG. We help companies by giving them tools, we give you all resources, we give you all understanding, capacity building. We have an online academy. We also have a physical or a local academy now in Malaysia as well. And our ambition, so we're not a consultant, so let me just put that out of the equation first. So we're not here to earn money off you, so to say. But our intent is to move the needle and to help companies to achieve their sustainability as well as their ESG goals. Now, someone asked me earlier as well, so how do you do ESG? I was like, okay, now I'm sure there are many experts who are going to share more on the technicalities later, but let's set the scene first together. And I also mentioned to this person that how do we do ESG? Now, how does UN Global Compact relate to ESG? Now, in the year 2004, Kofi Annan convened a bunch of people, and collectively they came out with a report called Who Cares Wins. Not sure if anyone heard of this report, but it's a good report as a good starting point. So the Who Cares Wins report was built to help investors as well as financial institutions to understand sustainability and to frame the thinking around ESG. So the word ESG was coined by the UN Global Compact to help companies as well as financial institutions to understand the business nature behind environment, social, and governance, and how it connects to individual businesses from the lens of human capital, natural capital, which, whether we like it or not, impacts financial capital, right? So that's how we fit into the ecosystem of ESG itself, right? Giving you all a little bit of background and context to that. So let's jump into it. Lately, I've had, and pardon my voice, so I just got better from a bad bout of flu. So yeah, masih not 100% yet, right? So anyways, as I was having some discussions in the past few months, some of them came up to me and told me that, hey, isn't ESG dead? There's no more ESG. Right? We don't need to do ESG anymore, right? And I was a bit surprised and perplexed at the same time. Where is this question coming from? And I said, oh, I see. Let the flag do the talking, right? So I don't need to say it, right? Always nice to start the morning with some controversy as well, So it is clear that we are living in some uncertain times, right? Let's address the elephant in the room, and let's call a spade a spade. right? So do we still do ESG? Do we still do sustainability? The world of sustainability is not what it was last year, and it's not what it was maybe 2 years ago as well. It's constantly evolving, right? And the political tides are shifting. Whether we like it or not, our businesses are also pegged and tied to geopolitical things that happen all over the world. Now, economies are also facing the brunt of all of this. And we understand that, the question mark that we have to address is, do we still pursue this agenda or not? We'll go through this together. Hence why I said, let's use this as an opportunity to think together, right? Now, we have seen efforts such as DEI. I was told that DEI is now a bad word in America. So you're not supposed to use the word DEI anymore. You have to come up with some new words for it as well. So I said, okay. So DEI efforts are all being questioned as well. And climate commitments delayed. We all know that the US has now opted out of the Paris Agreement as well, right? And activists, to some extent, they are still labeled as agitators now, because we are speaking the good speak, right? And I think the predicament of companies is that they are now caught in the winds of being in between of two things. Do you appease the political winds that are shifting, or do you continue doing business which is supposed to be good business, right? So, in a nutshell, ESG and sustainability was never meant to be bad for business. It was always meant to help business to do better. That's all. It was just meant to be a means of doing well and doing good while we are at it. It's a combination of two things. Do well. You can't save the planet if your business is not doing well, right? So you have to do well, and while you're doing well, you must do good. That was the notion, clear and simple. However, because of all these new political agendas that we are looking at, ESG, which was once looked at, the next step for businesses to take, is under scrutiny. Some say this is just purely compliance, right? Some say this is just another political agenda. Some over here tell us that, this is the West. That's funny because the West doesn't want it anymore, actually. So I'm not sure if we still call this as the West anymore or not, right? With some fog of uncertainty, we have to understand that the question that we have to ask is ESG actually dead or not? Let's find out together. I'm not here to tell you whether it's alive or dead. So let's find out together. So we have seen some signaling from some companies. I put together some examples here, Deloitte and so on, right? And the signaling from the top is that some of these companies are now scrambling to roll back some of their ESG initiatives. This is a fact, right? And we are seeing it, of course, not in our shores, but we are seeing it in the West. And they are doing it not because it's the right thing to do. Obviously, it's not the right thing to do, right? They are doing it purely because of political wins, and how do you align yourself based on that? Sometimes the bigger you are, the lesser the opportunity to behave independently, so to say, right? And you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of public opinion. And as we know, the American public opinion, it tends to take a life of its own, right? The question is, will there be more companies that will follow? If yes, then who is going to be next? If you are a particular supplier to that company, then does this impact you as a business over here, right? So we have to always bring back to the most basic question, how does this relate back to your business, right? So the fun part is that, thank God, not everyone is silent. Thankfully for that. There has been pushback. We have seen some form of pushback from the EU, although the EU is 50-50 on a couple of things, right? So they have pushed forward some things and also introduced the omnibus and a few other things to, sort of play out a balance of things. There are companies that are pushing back, and most importantly, there are people who are pushing back. Now, my question is, if we are talking about a topic that is no longer relevant, then no one will bother to push back. In fact, they will just ignore because it has no relevance whatsoever to them. But when you see companies start to push back and then you see people start to push back, then you understand, okay, That means now we have to also understand that there is a business impact that can happen from things like this, right? So if we were to look at it from a relevancy perspective, I have one example that I sort of like actually, and it's just to send that power of the people in terms of sending a message. So in America, they have this clothing store called Target, right? So Target sells clothing predominantly to black Americans, right? So the middle and lower income people buy their clothes from Target. So Target rolled back on their DEI agenda because as we have all sort of agreed that DEI is a bad word, right? So Target sort of rolled back on their DEI agenda. They said, okay, we'll do this. Now we have to learn from the Americans in the sense of how to do a boycott. Okay? So the black community and the underprivileged community as well as the lower income community that was buying from Target, they decided to hold a boycott against Target because when you roll back DEI, it's not just about the LGBTQ community and things like that. When we talk about DEI, we're talking about inclusivity, we're talking about all levels of society, social mobility and all. There's so many topics that is tied inside there. Unfortunately, a political lens just brings out the rainbow colors alone. Now, people push back and they said, we will boycott Target. Interestingly, Target has seen a loss of about 12 billion in revenue in a short span of few months. Not just from the pushback from people. Of course, there are a few other elements to it, but mainly pushed by the boycott that was instigated by people who said, okay, if you roll back on your DEI, then I will stop buying from you. Now, this is a wonderful learning experience for me. I said, wow, Malaysians, we have to learn from this community how to do a boycott. 12 billion in losses, make anyone jump up their seat and, change their, call a board meeting and say, hey, I think we have to look at this again. Something is going on that, we have to address. So, when you see things like this, we can ask a simple question that we can answer together actually, right? That if ESG is purely noise, will all this happen? Right? So it's not purely noise anymore, and as long as people and companies are operating in a better way, we as individuals should be in support of it because it means that it's going to translate to better living conditions for workers, better wages, more sensitive to the environment that we are operating in and so on and so forth. Okay, so I hope I sort of answered one big question that has been posed to me a couple of times lately, and I hope that we sort of came together in understanding that ESG in the West, it can mean something else, but for us, it's just something that we do. Right? Now, in my view, I'm also excited to see, when I go to a conference, last time when I'm speaking, most of the time, half the people who attend the conference, I pun kenal, because it's always the same faces, right? But nowadays, I'm a bit more excited, because when I come to conferences like this, I see new faces. In fact, I don't know anyone. I only knew Dr. John, I know Prof, probably I know like 4 people here. And that was a good thing. For me, it was the best thing that can happen this morning. I just flew in from Johor and I calculate my carbon emissions as I fly. So we offset it later as well. Right? Make sure I'm responsible while I'm at it. But for me, it's exciting to see new people all together because it tells me that now sustainability is moving out of the sustainability department and is moving into different operations in the organization. I just met a particular person from IE Selangor who's from ops, not from the sustainability department, which is exciting to me because I'm also bored of talking to the sustainability guys. We all talk the same thing all the time so cukup, kan? So it's time to talk to the other guys. So we've been having conversations with procurement, we've been having conversations with different facets of divisions within organizations. And this is more fun and more exciting. So for me, ESG is growing up. It is finally shedding its illusion of just being nice to have, something to put in a trophy hall or whatever. And now it's going into operations. This is important because when you move ESG out of the checklist family, right? It is no longer just a compliance, but it is no longer a footnote that is put in your report and things like that. But now it is going into an age of how do you use this for your risk and opportunity to your organization. Are there opportunities that are coming from this? And also, is there any risk that you can identify from this? That's all. Pretty much that's what we are going to do, right? ESG just asks you to understand what sort of targets to set in terms of doing better, what sort of risk and opportunities you want to identify, how do you have some governance on all of this, and how do you put some strategies. Itu je. So if we were to put ESG in a nutshell, I'll just put it in that four pillars of TCFD, or how they have framed it, governance, targets and metrics, strategy, as well as risk management. Okay? That's about it. It's quite simple, right? So as ESG now moves out from just being a nice to have sort of a conversation, when we have a lot of operationalized conversation, now you're going to hear a whole bunch of new jargons. So I'm not sure the mix of audience. Maybe some of you are listed, maybe some of you are not, maybe some of you are SMEs, maybe some in the mid, smaller, and so on. But you are now going to start to listen to more jargons come your way. Wordings such as ISSB, GRI, IFRS, S1, S2. It was so, for me, it was intriguing to see. As we were entering the hall, I saw the Singapore Chartered Accountant Institute had a booth there. Some people might wonder, why is the Chartered Accountants here? The Chartered Accountants are now overjoyed to some extent, I think, because the new sustainability reporting standards, they are the custodians, right? So IFRS S1 and S2, I mean, they have been using IFRS for the longest time. So the accounting fraternity, some tell me they're happy, some tell me they're not, because also means more work. But to some extent, it shows how ESG is moving out of just one office of just being in the sustainability unit and now being operationalized into organizations. We will get into some of the detailing in a bit. So for the longest time, as we all know, again, I mentioned to Prof earlier that I won't go into technicalities today. Let me set the scene for all my other speakers, because they will give you a little bit more on how are they operationalizing this in their organization. But for me to give out the clear message, first things first, sustainability and ESG is not anti-business. Okay? Let's get that part clear. Traditionally, how we look at business is, it must be strategy, it must be scorecard, there must be KPIs, it must be bottom line focus at the end of the day. And sustainability does not move you away from this particular focus. It does not tell you, hey, don't be KPI focused, don't have strategies, don't do well as a business. Earlier we have talked about this, right? So this is not about not doing well for business. It is meant to do business better. Now, the traditional model of business helps you to quantify a lot of things and also understand the qualitative aspect of things, right? And performance at the end of the day usually equates to profit. So the better you perform as an organization, as a company, the better your profits will also start to reflect in your numbers. KPIs were clean, you set your KPIs for your teams as well, just to ensure that we hit the performance numbers and your targets. Nothing wrong in that, but this is the legacy model that many of our leaders are still holding on to. So some of the convincing that needs to happen is now we have to convince our leaders it's not just about bottom line, but we also have to now pivot the thinking a little bit more towards, to add on two more additionalities to it, which is the triple, they call it the TBL, triple bottom line. So the triple bottom line just adds on the people and planet. It still keeps the profit part. So when we talk about profit, it must be performance, it must be strategic and things like that. Same thing when you do people as well as planet. It's just an add-on to what you were already doing. So suddenly, you can't say that, we are no longer focused about performance in the sense of profit. It's not. Because there is a relatability that comes back to your bottom line when you talk about ESG as well, right? So, moving away purely from spreadsheets, so to say, and the footprint that you're going to leave on the planet is something that you're going to start to be a bit more conscious when you do your business. How are you behaving, not only in your organization, but also in your surrounding communities? Are they taken care of? Just to make sure that, you're not impacting them. You want to ensure that your workforce is well taken care of, and then you also want to ensure that your supply chain is also following this, and all of you are doing it together. So I was just telling a person that I was speaking to earlier that for me this is sort of like the halal market. When you become halal, you change the way you operate your business, right? So you ensure that cleanliness is part of it, you ensure that there's new compliance that you adopt into your business, and then you ensure that your supply chain is also halal. And if they are not, then you will find a new supplier, or you will teach them, go and get your halal certification, and we're all in it together. Sama je. Not too far apart, right? This analogy is just to help you to understand the thinking in the sense of how it's going to impact you. So some of the smaller companies, SMEs, tend to say, I don't need to do all of this because, I've got nothing to do with it. Now, to some extent, tak salah. What you said is correct. But if you are supplying to one of the big companies, then this is something that you will need to start doing. Yeah? So I was talking to Dr. John earlier, and gave me some insight. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, John. Hang on. John was telling me he's working with a bunch of SMEs, or he's talking to one particular SME who is a supplier to a particular financial institution in Malaysia. And they have put a requirement for the supplier to comply to their code of conduct. Right? So this is how it trickles down to everyone else who's doing business. So we can say, I'm fine, my business is doing okay, right? Just use that business lens and think, if I'm supplying to the bigger boy, I might need to take this up and do this as well. And just add on 2 more things to my bottom line, which is the people as well as the planet, right? Another example that I can give you is last year, Petronas has launched their PSSP, which is the Petronas Supplier Support Program, right? And what does this mean? This means they want all their suppliers to report back their scope 1, 2, as well as their business and human rights back to Petronas. So why is Petronas doing this? For them, very simple. They are showing leadership. They are the biggest boy in Malaysia, and they are showing leadership in the sense that, okay, you're not alone in your journey. Let me help you on your journey, and I will give you the tools and resources to do this. So we are actually the capacity building partners to Petronas to help them with their supply chain. So the supply chain is classified under beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And then we teach them according to that. How to calculate your GHG emissions. And as I said earlier, I'm not a consultant. So we won't tie you to a software and then tell you, oh, after this you have to subscribe to me and all that. Tada. I give you the Excel sheet. I teach you how to calculate. You go home and you do it on your own. In fact, I'll give you scenarios of how to calculate your scope 2 emission, for example. These are TNB bill, 1 tahun. Where do you look at? And then put in the numbers. What is the emission factor? What is the mathematics behind it? It's not really rocket science. In fact, I think it's one of the most simplified version of maths that we have to do. It's just great emission factor. You're going to times it with your usage. And that's about it. You're going to get your number of. Okay? So don't believe in all this mystery of, ESG is complicated and you'll need a consultant to do it. I mean, the moment you demystify this, then you understand that, I've been conned. Tak adalah susah sangat. If you know how to do it, you have the tools and the resources, then do it. Just keep in mind that you might not want to have just one person being a champion. Because a champion leaves, then you're championless. So try to get your whole organization into it and understand that, you also want to mitigate your business service. So why make one person a champion, right? So think of it in that sense and just diversify in the sense of making many people in your organization understand and learn it. Now, some people still tell me, okay, all this makes sense, it's compelling, but all this is expensive, a buyer is not asking, and to some extent, greenwashing also works. Are you all familiar with the term greenwashing? So familiarize yourself with the other terms that are coming your way. So not just greenwashing, impact washing, social washing, macam-macam washing coming. So you just got to keep a lens on all the washing, I guess. And to some extent, all this is correct. It works, right? Until it doesn't. Until you are called out, you think it's fine. I was talking to a boat operator yesterday, and they supply to, they bring oil samples into Singapore and things like that, and they have lost their business, right? And why did they lose their business? Is because they put up some greenwashing claims that, they're using sustainable fuel and things like that. Unfortunately, they were supplying to Singapore, and that Singapore company is maybe a bit more sensitive to things like this, to use softer words. And so lost business altogether. But anyways, A lot of people say, I don't need to do all of this because it does not impact me. Now the question is, the impact can be either directly to you or indirectly to you. For me, if you are a business person, it's just a question of, are you prepared or are you not prepared? That's about it, right? And until you are caught in a situation where you are going to be the next front page news, then best to put some measures beforehand. And don't say that, you're not going to come out in the front page news because you're just operating somewhere, no one knows about you. I've shared the same example the last trip that we had, the session in Johor. And in Johor, we have one particular company that supplies to Dyson. Dyson, I'm sure you're all familiar, right? Expensive vacuum cleaners and so on. So we have this company called Atta IMS that supplies to Dyson in Johor. Now Atta was sort of caught for some human rights abuse that happened in their workforce. Living conditions were not properly taken care of and all these things. And then nowadays we all know, anything and everything will come out on TikTok and it's going to go all over the place quickly. So what do you do when you are caught in this situation? When it comes to human rights, there's only three things that you will do: policy, due diligence, and remedy. Right? You must have a policy internally in your organizations. You must have a mechanism of due diligence. If there is someone complaining, how do you check, so to say? And then how to fix it. Senang. But what Atta did was, if I may share a bit more on this. What Atta did was they hired a PR agency, came up with a nice PR campaign that, we are fine, we are taking care of whoever that we're supposed to be taking care of and so on. Unfortunately, when the due diligence done by Dyson happened, they failed the duty a couple of times. Now, fast forward, what happened to Atta after that? Atta pretty much lost Dyson's business. They posted a revenue loss of about 250 million. And to some extent, they are bust. They don't really do anything. So how does this impact? You don't just come out on the front page of the news, but it can also hit your bottom line all the way to tutup kedai. And this impacts the supply chain. So I knew two guys. One guy who was part of the people who were providing the transport and things like that, also lost the contract, and a few other guys. So does this mean that this chain effect can happen across the value chain? Yes, that's what it means. Right? Now on the flip side, if we were to look at it from a case study perspective, while Atta and Dyson was doing this, Dyson had two more suppliers in Johor. One is SKP, one more is VS Industries. Both these guys learned from what Atta did and they said, okay, we don't do the same mistake. So we get a consultant and we do a due diligence quickly. And they came out with a independent due diligence on their human rights, put out a report. If I were to look at it from a share price perspective, SKP's share after their due diligence report came out went up by 30 cents. And VS Industries' share price went up by 20 cents. And when we talk about cents in shares, means in the millions. So does this impact the bottom line? Clearly it does. So when we talk about people and planet, it's not in isolation, we must take care of the planet on its own. It's part of how you do business. When we talk about people, it's not in isolation. It's not about, we have to care for the society outside that. That's one part of it, but mainly take care and protect of your workforce and ensure that you are doing good by them as well, right? So, as much as we would like to say it doesn't impact us, it can impact you. The question is, are we prepared as a business? That's about it, right? Now, to answer the question of, is this just purely cost? We also have to look at it that, if we don't do it, will it impact and become a loss to us? I think ESG has to be seen as a hedge, as a marker that helps you to do better in terms of your business itself, right? If you do have climate disruptions, it can impact your business. If you do have reputational impact that happens from either the social or any other of the ESG pillars, it can impact your business, right? So to say that, this is too expensive, I don't need to do it, I think the misinformation commonly comes when it's there, when you say that it's too expensive. When you go into the detailing of how to do it, then you understand, maybe I've already done a whole bunch of things. I already have my ISO 14,000, for example, or 9,000 or whatever. And can this all be also marked off as some of the ESG items? Yes, it can. So it's not new things that you are introducing. High possibility is sometimes we have not taken stock of the things that we have already done, aligning it back and ensuring that you are just adding on and making sure that we are just putting all of this under the correct classifications. So it's not new costs entirely. I'm not an impractical person. There is definitely going to be cost involved as well. If you're going to change your lights from normal bulbs to LED lights, mesti ada cost. Kan? But the question is, does this give you long-term benefit or not? If yes, then put it as a capex and then see how long you will take to recover this particular cost. So just always keep that business lens always in your head while you're doing ESG. So not about saving the planet, not about running out there and saving children from burning fires or whatever. It's about just operating your business in the most efficient way possible. Excuse me. I think we've set that part of the equation quite clearly that, this is something that we have to do, easy to do to some extent. Some things probably already done as well, right? So we just have to shift some of the questions, whether we still have to do this from the beginning or where do we start from and things like that, right? And the clear understanding is that ESG and sustainability, at the end of the day, it is not against expansion, but it's to help you to expand your business in the best way possible, right? Now, some guys also think that, it won't really impact us as long as we are not in certain types of business. So for me, in my view, as I mentioned earlier, if you think that you want to make your business perform better, just adopt it early. No harm being early adopters. In fact, we are no longer in the early stages. In terms of ESG and sustainability, the conversation has moved over the past 2 or 3 years to quite a significant pace that if we are not doing it, then we have to now catch up. So you're no longer having, I'm first mover advantage, now I'm going to start, I'll be first in the market. You're not, right? So don't put the cart before the horse. You have to catch up. At this juncture, we have moved beyond, should we be doing this and things like that, but we have to do this, and how quickly can we get this done? Now, we also have to understand that globally, whatever that is happening will also to some extent impact your business, right? And just to give you a snapshot, to some extent, I call it the weaponization of ESG. Some say that ESG is all good things. Don't forget, it can also be used as a weapon. To some extent, if we see in terms of weaponization, how it impacts business in Malaysia. So, we have seen that EU has introduced the CBAM, right? The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or carbon tax. And this carbon tax will trickle down to 6 types of businesses, which include aluminium, steel, and cement, which goes from Malaysia to EU as well, right? And when they introduce this form of a carbon tax, for example, what does this mean? Items that come from Malaysia going into their borders will be imposed with a tax. This also means that they are encouraging for their local suppliers to also fulfill the demand, right? So it's a weapon. Whether we like to see it as a weapon or not, subjective, I'm sure. But for me, clearly it's a weapon. So if we are going into a battle of business with guys holding weapons, then make sure that we also are holding the right weapons as well. We have to ensure that we are equipped enough to go in, ensure that we know what we are doing, and to counter things like this as well. So we can't stop them from doing it. Now the question is, how do you do business better so that it does not impact your bottom line or have too much of an impact on your business as a whole, right? So we have no choice. We have to act. We don't have time to just react as it comes. And this is not the only regulation, right? So you have the EUDR, you have so many new regulations coming our way. Singapore already has a carbon tax. Companies that operate in Johor, we are already asking in Johor, hey, what do I do if the carbon tax now goes to the supply chain? and then we also have to pay. So you see, this thinking is not happening at all stages. So just put your hat on in that sense of how do you do this quickly and how do you do this in the most effective manner possible, right? Now, globally, although there are so many things happening, we got all these regulations coming our way. I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but there are many regulations coming your way from a local perspective as well. So it's not just purely coming from the Mat Salleh punya planet, but locally, Malaysia has also made our commitments, and we will also need to adhere to some of this in terms of compliance, reporting, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's a good thing, but of course, additional work, but Malaysia has kept its commitments alive. Unfortunately, we have a ministerless ministry when it comes to environment at the moment. Hopefully that vacancy will be filled up quickly because it is an important time. We have the climate change bill and act coming up, right? So Malaysia has announced our commitments, and whatever that is happening in the West has not changed our signaling. So we continue to uphold what we want to do, which is 45% reductions of emission by 2030. We want to, go towards renewable energies. We have launched our national energy transition roadmaps. We have put together all our commitments. We've got the big companies in Malaysia that have put their commitments and say, okay, we will do our net zero targets and so on and so forth. So from the Malaysian perspective, it does not look like it's scaling down, but it looks like it's actually scaling up, right? I'm sure you all will agree with me. Those of you who are listed have no choice, and that part of the conversation, we'll get to that in a while. But for companies, what does this mean when you get all your national policies now being aligned to some extent with climate-related policies as well as human rights policies? That means as a business for us, very simple. We also just follow and align. Right? So if the government says reduce your emissions, then you work on reducing your scope 1, scope 2, maybe even scope 3 emissions as you go about it. So quite straightforward, but these are some of the commitments. In actuality, if I were to put all the national commitments, probably take like 10 slides. Tapi they will probably put you back to sleep. So let's not go there. There are a lot of commitments that are already done in Malaysia, and it's going to get more and more, and we're going to take a snapshot of some of that more that is happening. So we have introduced the National Sustainability Reporting Framework. For those of you who can't see the slides and want to snap, feel free to take my slides from the organizer. Happy to share. And if you want to know more, you can always call me and I'm happy for a chat. I never say no to a good tea session, teh tarik, and boleh je. Now, the National Sustainability Reporting Framework has been introduced in Malaysia. So what does this cover? Right? So it means that the businesses in Malaysia will have to report, or at least the listed ones will have to report based on a particular standard, which is on the ISSB standards, right? So for those of you who have done your TCFD, for an example, like Selangor, if I were to take an example, so they align their reporting to TCFD. For them, will be easy. So the guys who have done the TCFD for you all, it's just a step up into IFRS S1 and S2, also known as ISSB. Those of you who have not heard of any of these alphabets here, my suggestion is quickly start to Google, understand all these alphabets, and see how you can use this as easily as possible. Now, I had a chat with ACCA, which is the Chartered Accountants Malaysia, and just complimenting them on some of the tools and the resources that they have put out. So they give out Excel sheets for S1, they give you Excel sheets for S2 calculations and so on. FOC, just download saja. You don't need to go and hire a consultant to go and figure out where is all this hidden. I think our biggest challenge is we don't have one website that has all this information at one place. But then again, it never stops us from joining treasure hunts, right? So just go about looking for it, and eventually you will uncover all of it. So all this clearly means that ESG, sustainability, no longer about storytelling, no longer about telling, I do this without any substance behind your claims. This one quantifies not only your claims, but now makes you fulfill a whole bunch of new requirements that you were also not looking at before this. Now you have to do it, right? So documentation, data collection, making sure timely reporting, all this is being done. It does not matter if you're big or small. Even if you're SME, you can adopt things like this. there are so many guides out there on how SMEs can also adopt ISSB. Tak susah sangat, So there are many tools and resources out there for you to begin with, and just go into. You have to spend a bit of time, like kena baca dulu, understand the whole thing, and then once you know what you're doing, take it one step at a time. Perfection. I'm just going to quote what everyone usually says, So perfection shouldn't be the hurdle of progress, right? So take few steps at a time, get there, and most of us are in the same phase. There is no expert. See, I speak to many so-called sustainability experts. I use the word so-called because some of them are so-called, And one of the red flags that come up is when they tell me, "Oh, I'm an expert in ISSB." I say, "Wow, must be a lonely place because there's probably like only one or two people who claim to be experts. The actual experts don't dare to claim they are experts, lah. That's usually the soalan bocho is that, lah. Actual experts won't say they're experts. They will tell you, okay, I can do this, I understand strategy and, risk management and things like that. They'll tell you components of ISSB or TCFD that they are good at. They won't claim to be the best. So I have one conversation with one particular lady who told me that, I'm the best when it comes to TCFD reporting. I said, oh, interesting. I said, how do you do it? You do a SWOT analysis first. I said, okay. Then what do you do? She said, that's it. I said, oh. No wonder you're the expert, You made it sound so easy that that it just doesn't make sense, right? So be careful on who you're going to put if you're going to invest in a consultant and so on, right? So just be a bit more cognizant that, not everyone is an expert out there, lah. Better to upskill internally first. Make sure that you have some internal talent who understand these topics. Boss sometimes tak ada masa. Oops. I thought I had a lot of time, so, okay. So build some internal expertise. I have to speed up my time. Just to give you, I'm sure some of the speakers are going to cover the technicalities, but just to give you all a little bit of understanding. So your sustainability reporting, if you're group 1 and 2, meaning you are listed, main market or any other markets, as long as you're listed, you will have to do sustainability reporting based on ISSB. And if they give you some time before you do your scope 3 calculations, which is your suppliers. So part of all of this, the beauty behind all of this is the suppliers will also now need to start reporting. Ada masa lah. So depending on which group, when you will start reporting on your scope 3 emissions, there is a little bit of time, but it's an eventuality, meaning it's coming your way, it's coming to all of us lah, right? Now the nice thing about the new framework is it does not just impact the listed guys. If you're non-listed 2 billion and above group, the third group there, you will also need to do ISSB reporting, right? So this is coming your way, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of context. I believe there's going to be some bank people who are going to give you some background on this, but just to give you the understanding that this is not just coming from the reporting framework, but Bank Negara has also introduced their climate change and principle-based taxonomy. And what does the taxonomy do? It sort of helps the banks understand if their investments are going to be, is there a risk and opportunity from sustainability related investments? And as the banks do it, they will classify companies based on a due diligence questionnaire. They will classify the companies on C1 to C5. As you can see, the colors that usually stand out are the colors that you don't want to be in. So if you're in the watch list, then they will no longer finance you. Right? So for now, this is meant for sustainable loans and green loans and so on. Of course, as a person, as a practitioner, my view will be that eventually it should go to all loans, and we've sort of seen this in Singapore as well, right? And coming your way, so might as well prepare yourself as best as possible before it comes and catches you off guard. Right? Some context behind why the banks look at it. I'm sure the bank experts will tell you in more details, but for them, when they look at climate-related risk, for example, they want to understand if I give you a financing, just say your place is prone to flooding. And if I give you the financing, then will you have the ability to pay me back? Right? So I want to know, is this flooding one-off or all the time? Is it chronic or is it acute? Right? And if it's all the time, then, I mean, if I was a bank, I also don't want to give the financing. Right? Because you won't have the capabilities of financing back your loan. Right? So they want to understand this from that perspective. How does the climate-related risk and opportunity impact the particular financing that they're going to give? Right? And it is not just climate, they also look at it from a transition perspective. So they want to know, if today I give you financing and you have been building, say, ICE vehicles, normal car, and then you take a loan to buy a particular machine, and then basically you come and tell me, hey, we are no longer building ICE vehicles, tomorrow onwards we are building EV cars. Just say I financed you to buy that particular machine. My first question is that machine going to be used to build the EV cars or not? Right? If you're not going to use that machine anymore, is this going to become a stranded asset that you're not going to repay my loan? So you see how the banks actually are far ahead in terms of adopting ESG from a business lens. Meanwhile, the normal traditional businesses will talk about ESG emissions, social, biodiversity in the soil, and making sure that the water and wind. But you look at a bank, I tell you, we have to learn from the banks. These guys really know how to identify risk and opportunities. It's what they do for a living. So when they identify things like this, they want to know whether I give you a loan, do I put more insurance on you, add on more premiums and things like this. Not wrong in their perspective. Now the question is, we also should understand what is it that they are looking at. So we are prepared in that sense. Right? In a nutshell, it will affect the bottom line. So if you are caught off guard, then you might think that nothing to do with me. Just because my place got banjir all the time. Macam kami dari Johor, memang banjir banyak. Kan? So we have to think about this all the time. Does this impact business? How much of loss is all of this? And if I'm taking financing, then do I go into a non-performing loan, NPL and things like that, right? So just understand this is the lens that the bank is using. We spoke about greenwashing, so I won't go into too much of detailing, but I just want to let you guys know. A lot of people tell me, hey, so what? If I'm greenwashing and all that, so what? There's no law, right? So don't think there are no laws in Malaysia that can actually catch you here and there. So there are the Companies Act. You also have the CMSA Act. Happy to share my slides so that you can go look it up and double check if things like this will impact you if you were to give false reporting as well, right? I put together 2 slides for it just to ensure that we all understand that there's a lot of impact to this. Give me a few more minutes. Now, at the end of the day, for me, all we need to understand is the systemic lens of ESG, right? How it is connected to business and how we have to understand how to navigate our business as we move forward. Itu saja. Don't make it too complex. I know there are technicalities behind it, scope 1, scope 2, all these new terms that we have to understand. But at the end of the day, if you are operating a business, you just want to know, is this going to impact my business from a risk and opportunity lens? If there are risks, identify, mitigate, and see how you can fix it as much as possible. And if there are opportunities, go out there and get the opportunity. If the sustainable financing is going to give you better interest rate, then what stops you from taking it, right? Ensure that you have that lens for opportunities. Maybe on and off start thinking as a banker also, so you can clearly understand what is the risk and opportunity behind all these things. I've got a few more slides that I want to go into, but I won't. I will share my slides with you. I don't want to take up the time for the next speaker. And if there are any questions, I'm going to be around until lunch as well, I believe. And feel free to share more questions with me. So, my last few words before I step off. For me, vision, again, not my words, I'm just going to quote things that make sense, right? So vision without execution, they say it's hallucination, right? So you hallucinate if there's vision without execution. And if there's execution without vision, then they say it's foolishness, So today, my job here is to just ensure that you get the vision behind what is going on, the understanding behind the whole thing, and how to execute it to some extent. I can't handhold in 45 minutes, unfortunately. I wish I can. But if you need tools, if you need resources, there are many people who are willing to share. You've got people in the room, such as Dr. John, always happy to share. You've got myself, always happy to share. You've got the UN Global Compact, always willing to give you our tools, our resources, help you to start your journey if you have not started. If you're already halfway into your journey as well, more than happy to involve you in different level conversations and address whatever needs that you will have at that level as well. So we are here. I'm not a fan of Liverpool, but to some extent, I'm not a fan of any football club, but you are not walking alone in the journey, so to say, right? So there are many people who are at the same stage of the journey with you. No one ahead, no one is an expert, no one, right? Let's just call it as what it is, right? We are all learning at the same pace, at the same time, and it's a good time to be learning at the same time because then you get to check with your peer. Hey, what are you doing? You can share some tools and resources with me. I've done it as well, right? So I asked some people, some of the tools and resources that you use, can we share this to others? They say, yeah, go ahead. I'm also sometimes taken aback by the kindness of people, but I guess that makes us Malaysian, right? At the end of the day, we are all kind people who say, just take my tools and share, unless you're a consultant, then you put a bill to it, right? So have the vision and understand how to execute ESG and make sure that you remember that you want to make this as part of your business decision. That's all. It is part of your strategy and it is going to help you to make your business better. Not at the impact of profit, but it is meant to balance the doing well as the doing good. Thank you.
All right.